Welcome to Big Dan's Airgun Reviews. Today we're going to be looking at an interesting little PCP. We've done a few spring guns in a row, so now it's time to whack out a gun and see what we think of it. This is the Reximex Regime. It's a very accessible, semi-entry-level PCP rifle, or semi-bullpup rifle. We charge $465 for these at Big Dan's Airguns. That includes testing. But would you even want to potentially look at one of these? Well, let's see how the rifle gets on the review, and let's find out. So, first things first, let's see what comes with the Regime and what you get for your money. Right, so features, and why is the gun facing the other way now? Well, that's because there's more stuff on the right-hand side than what there is on the left at the moment, and that's where things get interesting. But as always, we'll start off at the rear of the gun. You can see you do have an adjustable recoil pad on the back, and on top of that, it's also adjustable for length of pull. You can see it at the moment. The rifle's sticking its ass out of the way, trying to get itself some attention. As we come slightly further along, you have got the power adjuster built into the gun, fairly typical of most Turkish gear. But the thing that I really like, one of the positives already, is the fact the pressure gauge is somewhere right where you want it to be, and that is away from that barrel. Sadly, even some of the premium guns we've tested on this channel can't even do that, have the decency to put the gauge in a good place. Reximex, though, at least on tests so far, I believe, other than the Mito pistol, which could be a case of fair enough, they're right where they always should be, and that is away from that barrel. Well done, Reximex. The rifle is a semi-bullpup, as you can see here. Now, this is where things get interesting. The cocking system on this can actually be switched from right-hand cocking to left-hand cocking. Really, really nice feature to have on a gun that is so cheap. You don't see many with that capability. The other thing that's interesting, we're going to have to come up a bit for this, hopefully you can see them. Can you see there's two, there's spirit gauges really, level gauges, but there's two gauges on there. That is really going to help people who shoot at silly ranges, maybe not quite so much in the UK here at sub 12, but for people in America and abroad who have these running at 40, 50 feet pound, you want to hit targets maybe 100 plus yards with it, that's really going to help you. As we move slightly further along, you have also got an adjustable Weaver scope rail. Now, this is a massive feature that I'm a big fan of, especially on bullpup type rifles, because a lot of the issues you have with the bullpup is the scope rail's a bit too low, or for some reason, like with the Benjamin Aquila, the cheek piece is far too high. That shouldn't be an issue with this. All you need to do to adjust it, you can see those grub screws in the scope rail. There's two on the other side. Loosen them, you can raise that rail up, and you should get pretty much perfect eye alignment. As we come down, we also have a nicely textured grip and forestock, and a match type trigger there. We'll talk a bit more about that in the handling section. And also the safety in front of the trigger blade, which is quite nice to see. But again, we'll talk a bit more about that when it comes to handling. As we come further along, another nice little feature is the baffled shroud, which should keep it nice and quiet, but we'll have a little play with it in the handling section. I'll let you know if it's actually there for show or if it actually serves a purpose. As we come down a bit more, typically with most Turkish guns, you do get two mags as standard, which is always nice to see, and a little accessory pack with it as well. So you've got grub screws in there, or Allen keys, sorry. Allen keys, there's a screw there for the accessory rail under the forestock, such like that, so you can chuck a bipod on it without having to drill into your stock and all that sort of stuff, which is always really nice to see. But overall, for the cost, we charge, if we haven't mentioned it already, $465 for these, including testing. Considering what you're paying, you've got an absolute crap load of features on a very small-ish looking gun. But let's put it to the shoulder now and see what we really think of it, because obviously if it handles like jelly when you've got it up there, it doesn't matter how much or little you're paying for it, it's no good. So let's put it in the shoulder and see what we think. However, before we get to handling, we need to see how you load these mags, because they can be a little bit fiddly. What I will say is, if you've seen our Reximex Pretensis video or any of the Crowl videos we've done, skip on from this, because you already know pretty much how this works. These and the Crowl mags are very similar. So if you haven't seen this before, when you look at your mag, you'll see a little arrow going around clockwise. So what you want to do, this top tray spins. Spin that around as far as you can. Don't be too harsh with it, because what can happen, sorry, I just punched you in the face then. What can happen is you can push it too far and actually break the mag. But it takes a bit to do it, but don't be a bit of a Neanderthal, essentially, when loading your mags. Use your index finger and thumb to hold it like that, which is more or less how I do it. And then, if anything, see, your middle finger does have other uses than what you think it's for. Use your middle finger to cover up the pellet loading hole there, and simply load your first pellet, nose first, straight in. What this will do, it'll hold that spring under tension that's in the mag, and then you can simply load the rest straight through the top, like so. until you're done. It's pretty simple really, but it can catch people out if it's your first time using the mags. So that's it for mag loading. I'll get this one filled up, and then let's move on to handling. Let's see what it's like when you put the little regime in the shoulder. Okay, so handling. What do we think of the Reximex Regime? Well, it's an odd little critter, because I shouldn't like it. And the reason why I shouldn't like it is because if you watch these videos, you'll know I don't like tactical stuff. And it's not just the budget gear that does it. Obviously, you do get the reproduction sort of Crossman. I believe Milbro make a rifle that's pretending it's a break barrel M16 and such like that. Let's be honest, the expensive gear's doing it too. I've seen the muzzle brake. Some of you are running on your little Leshies where it looks like it come off a frickin' Sherman Firefly tank. Come on, you're all doing it. And don't get me started on the AGT Vixen, but that's enough of that. I don't want to make any more enemies potentially out there. But yeah, tactical stuff doesn't do it for me at all. This originally didn't do it for me, and even now I'm a bit like that. When I first saw the brochure come out with the regimes on there, I thought, oh, what have you done that for? Like, you've got that beautiful Pretensis, the little Mito pistols with the walnut grips, a lovely looking little thing. Why have you done this, you numpties? Why have you made a bloody, a bullpup assault rifle, basically? Let's be honest, you can see the magazine almost coming down there, can't you? It's almost made for it. Rip it out, put a new one in. Yeah, it's not really my cup of tea. However, you need to look at it from a different perspective, and that is actually, believe it or not, hunting. This gun has been designed in this way because this plastic chassis, shall we call it, is completely protecting all of the important gubbins on this gun that might get, say, caught on the bush, like you don't want bits scratched. Even your Crowell rifles with your walnut stocks, and they do have gorgeous little stocks on them. You don't really want to get busted up and scratched when you're out hunting in the brush and things like that. This, you haven't got to worry about it. It's completely covered up with this here, so nothing's really going to get damaged. But overall, with that said, let's move on to the actual handling of the gun. Now I've got my biases and such out of the way, or negative biases, we'll say. Handling wise, actually really nice, that all said and done. That's a Konus Pro 6-24 by 44 on top, so she's a big old scope, but even with that on there, it's light as a feather. No real weight there at all. Dare I say it, you can almost juggle these things. Overall handling, pretty good. Balance-wise is just in front of the grip. I'd say it's pretty much in the trigger guard here. Even so, like I said, to be fair, I actually quite like that. It keeps the gun neutral, and it does come up really quite well. If I stop talking, just have a look at it, if you can see at the end of the barrel. And this is just elbows on knees job. Look how still I can keep this. It's not bad at all, is it? That in general is a very well set up little gun. However, it's not all perfect, which you'll see in a moment. One thing I will mention is obviously cocking. We've kept it on the right hand side. However, on the little regime, if you take these screws out and remove the scope rail, you then have access to the cocking mechanism where you can switch this from right to left-handed cocking. Then it's just a case of put your top part of the frame back in, then your scope rail, and then she's all set, ready to go. Left-handed cocking, but we've left it right-handed. Cocking effort-wise, it wasn't bad at all. It gets a little bit weighty as you're bringing it back, and there's a little bit of a long pull on it, but it's nothing really negative, I'll put it that way. It's just fairly typical, nothing really too amazing. It's not as smooth as a Pretensis, but it's not exactly uncomfortable, I'll put it that way. It will run in a bit, and I'm sure it will probably be 10 out of 10, but out the box, maybe slightly notchy at the final stage. Now, one thing I will mention, I'm a massive fan of, is that safety. That pucker. Lovely unit, it's nice and simple to use, it's right in your index finger's way, so you can get to it nice and easy, and on top of that, the only Achilles heel of this design, and the SMK XS38 did it, is when that toggle is too close to that trigger blade. So if you've got cold fingers and such, you might accidentally hit the blade instead. With this, they've done it perfectly. That safety toggle is away from the blade, so you can quickly and easily switch her off, switch it back on again. Obviously your resting position with your fingers up there anyway, so off she goes, on she goes. Fantastic. The other thing I'm going to mention, which is quite nice, is the trigger. Now it's an interesting little beast because, let's whack that off, it's a fake two-stage, at least out the box. When you're pulling it, I believe the rifle's cocked, no it's not, let's cock it first. Yep, so when you're pulling it, it's nice and light, you can feel it ever so slightly tightens up as you start pulling it at the final stage before it finally breaks. There. Now, I actually really like that, because some two-stage triggers, when you hit that stop on the second stage, depending on how it's set, don't get me wrong, you can set them so light sometimes, they're almost single stages anyway, but when you get to that second stage, sorry, sometimes it can pull you off ever so slightly before it finally breaks. With this, safety's already off, with this, where it tightens, if you can see that, gun is empty, there. It tells you when it's going to break, but it doesn't distract you, if that makes any sense. You know it tightens up, it's going to break now, just continue pulling, off it goes. I really like that. Won't be everyone's cup of tea. As you know, I'm a single stage man anyway, but I'm a massive, massive fan. That said, there is something you will have to, because originally I was going to say I didn't even mess about really with the buttstock or anything like that to get really comfortable with this little gun, because it is genuinely very nice to shoulder. However, you will have to adjust it if you have a nose this big, and let me show you why. Ready? All of a sudden, you're going to see I'm going to transform on camera. I'm going to go from Dan to Owen Wilson. Look at the nose. Yeah, that mag, if you leave it like that, if you've got a powerful nose, shall we call it, witch's nose, you might notice that it's going to start doing this to your schnoz. So for your comfort, adjust that length of pull back as you can. They even thought of that with this thing. Adjust that back a bit and you're going to be comfortable. I mean, look, in standard position, my nose is facing you, but my eyes are looking at the target. So let's just rack this one off. It's a lovely handling little thing, to be fair. And again, the fact you can set it left-hand cocking if you want is absolutely superb. Handling-wise, I'm a big, big fan. Styling, I'm still not sure. You can get these in although they're not in the UK yet. It'd be interesting to see what your comments are like, what you guys and girls think down below. You can get these actually from Reximex in a almost fake wood look, which is an interesting thing. It's like a Turkish version of the Air Max Cayman. But yeah, it's an interesting, lovely little gun handling-wise. Let me know what you think down below yourself. But obviously that doesn't mean anything if you only get 10 shots per fill and it's doing 3 feet-pounds. So let's whack the chronograph out before we praise it too much, and let's see what she's doing. Right, so it is accuracy testing time. Despite the low light, this is actually about 1 o'clock in the day, or about 1:30. It's just typical English December weather. I don't care what Greta Thunberg says, I feel pretty freaking cold round about now. We've got the target set up at our 25 or so yard mark, just over there on the corner. What we're going to do, we're going to have a few groups into our target at 25, and then we're going to push it on to 45 yards and have a little play with it and see how it does at that range or longer ranges. We have got quite an interesting smattering of pellets here. As you know, we always have some oddballs or some pellets that are a bit more premium, a bit more what you expect to see on a test. We'll start with the oddballs first though. We have got some of the new SMK Spitfire domes because we had some pretty good successes with these back with the Reximex Pretensis. In fact, they were the best pellet off memory. JSB Exact lead-free because they've also performed pretty well despite the fact that they're, well, a lead-free pellet. Slightly further up, we've got the Norma Superpoint Strike pointed pellets because, again, we've off camera anyway, we've been testing some rifles obviously for customers and such like that. They've actually done really quite well, so we thought we'd get some results on camera. And the Marksman pointed pellets, where I have no idea how they're going to do. The 2.5 shot well in the Cometa review we did. Let's see how the 177 points do. But here we've got your more traditional stuff, what you'd expect to see. So we've got the Rifle Dome Field Line pellets, Air Arms Diablo Field, Remington Thunder Barracuda or H&N Barracuda, BSA Gold Stars, because they've been making the rounds online and people do seem to be giving a good impression of them, and the QIS pellets by request. So that's what we've got planned. Target is set up. I'm going to have a couple of shots just to get it roughly on card, and then after that we'll see how we do. After that we'll push the target on to 45 yards and see how we get on. So let's get filming. Okay, so that's our 25-yard accuracy testing out of the way. We had some good pellets that absolutely misbehaved, and some pellets you expect to misbehave that actually did incredibly well. Marksman pellets, that's actually 8 shots into the target, but the first 3 completely missed, so I changed my aim point for the number 1 on the scorecard there, and thankfully we at least got something on card. The marksman pellets aren't actually, they're a budget pellet, but they're actually not that bad depending on some of the guns you put them through. Again, the Cometa 2.5 review we did, the marksmans actually did pretty well. Not today, sadly. Norma Super Point Strike. Now, the Normas are usually pretty pucker, it's got to be said, but the Super Points, sadly, were a little bit all over the place. BSA Gold Star. Now, this is a bit disappointing because most people that speak very, very highly of these. Again, not every pellet will work in every gun. It's got to be borne in mind, but not the best group. As we come a little higher, you've got the JSB lead freeze, and these were a shame because we had 3 pellets pretty much touching, as you can see, but the other 2 were off to the right. Now, usually one flyer, I will say, was me or something along those lines, but we had 2 this time, and they're not even close to the group. They're miles off. Now, granted, we did have, it wasn't wind as such, a minor breeze, I would call it, when we shot some of these pellets, but it's not enough to cause that much difference, to be brutally honest, so didn't quite like them. Now with these, I've got the target cards stacked a little bit awkwardly, but there's a very silly reason for that. So this is the Air Arms Diablo field and the rifle field domes. The reason why I've done that is because the groups are practically identical, just the other way around, and I just thought that was a little bit, I don't know, just a bit strange. Rifle field dome, not quite 20 pence group, you can see that there. Not awful, but not very good either. The Air Arms Diablos did a bit better. They can pretty much fit under that 20 pence piece, sorry. Not bad at all. As we come further up though, we have our 3 winners. So, number 1, we'll take a look at the QIS pellets. Now these have got a bit of a vertical spread, which is making me think either 1, they're a little bit maybe tight in the breech, and it's causing feet per second issues or variations, or number 2, maybe they're not weighed quite as well as maybe we'd like them to be. But that said, they do group, barring 1 flyer, again, could be me on that one, under a 5 pence piece and easily under a 20 pence piece. Next up, we move to the SMK Spitfires, or the Dome Spitfires, not the pointed versions. And you can see here, it's a messy, ugly group, but watch this. Boom, 5 pence. Hang on, there's a little bit sticking out there. There we go, 5 pence group. Can't complain about that. And then we have the Remington Thunder or H&N Barracuda. Now look at that. The main cluster, we have 1 shot low, but even so, that is pretty much 5 pence all day long. And if we move that to the side, the main cluster there, it's just dwarfed by that 5 pence piece. Ridiculously accurate with those. So Barracudas, for this gun at least, definitely seem to be the way to go. That said, we are now going to set the target up at our 45-yard mark, way at the back over there. We're going to take all 3 of these pellets to see how they do. We're going to do 5 shots again. And then after that, we'll come to our final verdict and see just what we think of the Reximex regime. So, let's reset the target and let's get to work. Okay, so 45-yard accuracy testing time. Don't worry, I'm not cheating. I know that doesn't look like 45 yards. We're actually stood in the middle of the range at the moment, drowning in mud, or sawdust as he tries to tell me. There's the bucket we're going to be resting on, obviously the chair behind that. Hopefully you might be able to see the backpacks on there. We'll be using that to rest on, obviously the rifle as well. Conditions wise, it's freezing cold, not that that matters. In fact, I believe the terminology that the weather people use is colder than a witch's tit. And there is a bit of wind, as you can see there. So we've got a little bit of a gust to contend with today. We'll see how we get on with it. But as mentioned, we're going to use the 3 best scoring pellets that we used during the 25-yard test, and we'll see how they're doing when lobbed down range at 45 yards and really stretch the legs on this little regime and see what she can do. So I'm looking forward to it. I can't feel my fingertips out of these gloves, but it should be a good bit of fun. So let's get the rifle all mounted up and see how we do. Okay, so accuracy testing is over and done with. How did we get on? It's actually quite interesting because essentially it was actually consistent in the way that it was inconsistent. I know it's sort of a catchphrase of ours saying that, because we get that quite a lot on this channel, but as we get closer to both groups, you'll see what we mean. So down below, we've got the 25-yard group of the Spitfire pellets. As you can see, it's actually a 5 pence group, but it's a bit messy. As we stretched it to 45 yards, you can see there the group definitely opens up a bit, and it's a very similar, I'll say, pattern, almost like a shotgun really, to what we had at 25. As we come along, we have the QYSs. 25 yards showed a lot of potential, but we had a bit of a vertical spread on the go, which is not obviously ideal. As we come up, it is amplified at 45, pretty much what we expected. But the thing is, it's a really big shame. You can see we've got 3 pellets there, almost, I wouldn't say quite in the same hole, well 2 of them are pretty much, but we had 3 pellets in a real tight cluster, but 2 of them just ended up nosediving. You could see it through the scope. Not ideal, I'm afraid. The absolute stars of the show were the Remington or H&N Barracuda pellets. These are the full fat 10.65 grains, and I wish I had some of the 9 grain Barracudas with me, because I'm sure they'd probably be even better. 25 yards, it was phenomenal. 1 pellet just out of the group there, but that's 5 shots. As we come up, you can see 45 yards, and it's more of the same. It actually looks neater to an extent maybe than the 25, simply because we don't have the flyer there. After that, I thought, Jesus, that's good. Right, one more test. Apologies, because we're probably going to write this in the description before we did it anyway, but I'll mention it again just real quick. Essentially, earlier in the video, I said that this would probably make the ideal, from a handling perspective anyway, hunting gun, because it's light. Even with the big scope on, it's light. But you can hold it deadly still. Well, I like to do my shooting a lot more hands-on, so as it's me involved, I don't really like shooting off rests, as you know, but we do it to get more consistent results out the gun. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. We set the camera up, as you could see, facing from behind the target card, and you can physically see me walk back to the chair, elbows on knees, shooting the gun. The only difference that we made, as you might have seen, was we weren't using the mag, but I was hand loading each pellet straight in. To be fair with you, that's kind of more or less how I shoot PCPs anyway. I know many target guys do that, but for this test, that was the only different thing we did. Obviously, as you can tell, gun's the exact same zero, all good stuff like that. Now, isn't this interesting? 1 shot, very low, make no mistake. However, it looks messy until you put a 20 pence piece on it. And as you can see there, that is pretty much bang on a 20 pence group with no resting. Not quite 45 yards. I did have to pull the target forwards a little bit so we could get the camera behind it. And my chair, you might have seen, was sitting in front of the bucket, not behind, because elbows on knees, I'll be shooting into the bloody bucket, won't I? But that, I don't think there's going to be any complaints. I'd say it's a dead pigeon pretty much every single time, barring that one, which I think we can probably all agree was probably me. It was the first shot, I believe, so probably heart rate, something like that. In terms of handling and accuracy potential, it is a fantastic little gun. But I think it's time now we finally wrapped it all up and called our final verdict. So let's see what we really think of the little Regime. Okay, so the Regime, we've got to be quick with this because my phone is on 1% battery, so we'll get that bit done first. What do we like, what don't we like? Well, positive, the shot count is good. If we go up here to the 80th shot, you'll see, ooh, where is it? There it is, if I bring you closer. Just to recap, you'll see there that you do get 80 shots before it starts going below 11 foot-pounds, which is bloody good. You actually get 120 shots, if we just come down a bit, before it then dips below 10 feet-pounds. So it's got some pretty damn good lungs on it for a non-regulated gun. You also get maximum power at maximum fill. I know some guns like the Air Arms, you're better off filling it from about 180 to 120 bar. With these, if you want max oomph, take it to the 250, maybe a little bit below, because I believe these are fitted with burst discs as well, and you do not want that to rupture, and you will be absolutely golden. The other thing I'll say we'll go into a negative now actually, why not? We like to be a little bit different on this channel. Negative things. Number one, the trigger is more of a fake 2-stage than a proper 2-stage. We covered this, I believe, in the handling section, but just to recap real quick. When you're pulling, it doesn't stop when it gets to that second stage and then brake. It just gets heavier and slows down, if that makes sense, and then goes. It's not a heavy trigger, though. Definitely pay attention to that. It's not like some of the cheaper ones where it's brake, 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 bang, there it goes. You feel it just a little bit. It heavies up and then pop, off she goes. I really like that, but it might put some people off. The other thing that needs mentioning, which it's not the only gun that does this, but ideally it wouldn't be this way, the pellet probe housing is a standardized size. I believe it's fit for a 2.5. I don't know, I'm not sure if in other countries they do these in 30 caliber, but essentially you've got a 177 probe poking out of a 2.5 caliber hole. So what can happen is, and it is user error to be honest, if you tilt the barrel up while you're cocking it, a pellet can fall straight back into that action. You'll know when it's done it because all of a sudden the side lever will stop moving and the trigger might also refuse to go. And what that is a piece of lead jamming everything up. Try to avoid that, and other than that you're golden. The other thing I'll say, obviously looks as subjective. Some people like myself originally, and maybe still a tiny little bit, are put off by the fact that the rifle looks like a machine gun. Let's be honest. If that was a holographic sight on there, you'd think, oh, someone's come to shoot me. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Again, it does sort of serve a purpose on this gun at least, unlike a lot of them on the market these days like that. Sorry if I mentioned it already. And don't get me wrong, it's a great gun, but the AGT Vixen, which has got that bloody banana mag poking out the bottom just as a mag holder. They could have designed that any other way, but they made it look like a machine gun. It's a trend that needs to die, if I'm brutally honest. These are air guns, not machine guns. Anyways, rant over. With this, it gets away with it because it serves a purpose. It's a chassis that is actually protecting the rest of the gun. Nothing's exposed. For hunting, this is fantastic. So all the bushes, anything that's going to scratch it is going to hit this, and it's not going to hit anything inside. So it should be a bloody tough little gun. The other thing that's great, again for hunting, quite a few things actually, the shroud is baffled and she is bloody quiet to go with it. Hopefully you could hear that in the handling section earlier. The other thing is the safety is absolutely brilliant. This gun, I think, was designed for fast handling. It does come up quick, it's light, it's very well balanced, it shoulders well. You can very quickly just flick that safety straight off when you need to take a shot. If your vermin gets away, pop it back on, just as quick as that. You don't need to fiddle around touching anything or flipping it over and pushing a switch or bloody putting your fingers in the trigger itself like some of them crossbar safeties out there. It's designed for a purpose, and that purpose, I believe, is hunting. Target work, it is still bloody good, however. Obviously, you can't hunt with an inaccurate gun, and you can see there 45 yards, it's pretty phenomenal. 25 yards, we had one flyer, which is unfortunate, but it was still pretty damn good. It's got good lungs, as we've already looked at. In general, it's a great little gun. You've got good features on there too. Bearing in mind this is only a 465-pound gun from Big Dan's Airguns, including testing. Sorry. Bearing in mind this is a budget gun, you would still say, for a PCP. It's smart. You can change the cocking from right to left-handed if you want. The scope rail is adjustable. You've got the adjustable butt pad, which is also, you can change it for length of pull as well, which you will need to do because the mag will punch you straight in the nose if you don't. It's a very, very smart little gun, and you've got the overall design of that chassis on there too. I like stuff like this. This is clever stuff. I wish the premium gear would maybe get out of the phase of being a bench rest tactical laser looking thing and would actually make guns that hunters can walk around with and use properly, that also don't cost thousands and thousands of pounds because of a badge that's on it. Let's be honest with each other right now. Again, not taking pot shots at anyone, all the premium stuff is usually pretty damn good, but hopefully you can sort of see what I'm trying to say with this. The budget gear is so good these days. But again, Reximex, Kral have really massively upped their game. We're testing the Rainson next, which granted is dearer than these. I think they're around £600 we're advertising them for. But that is a really interesting looking gun, and even that today is still considered budget at £600. It's mind-boggling. In two reasons. Number one, because you do get a lot with the gun, and number two, the fact that £600 is budget. But hey-ho, that's a different story for a different day. Overall, I am a massive fan. I will say this though, because I know I'm going to probably get it in the comments. If I had to choose Regime or Pretensis, which one would I choose? I can't answer it fully. What I would say is, if I was hunting, it's the Regime every day long. Even if it was a synthetic Pretensis, which is a nice gun, make no mistake, I'm still taking the Regime. It's just going to be much better in the brush. It's got all the accuracy you need for hunting out to all sensible ranges, at least in the sub 12 feet-pound areas like the UK and such like that. Brilliant. Genuinely brilliant. Possibly one of the best little hunters that we've even had on this channel. For range work, I would still go Pretensis, and I might give the Pretensis a tiny little nudge, just simply for the, no other way of putting it, the gun porn factor. It is absolutely beautiful, and you've got that lump of walnut on there as well. Either way, these guns accompany each other perfectly, and I cannot praise, to be honest, even the Regime, despite my negatives against it, I can't praise the Regime or the Pretensis enough for what they're doing and showing people you don't need to spend a fortune to get a bloody good gun these days. But that's enough of that. I'd like to thank everyone for watching this video review. I do apologise for the crazy amount of time it's taken to get this one out. We are going to crack on with the Rainson ASAP, and then after that we have got a really interesting spring gun that I've been waiting years to shoot, and I cannot wait to get it on camera. She's a little tatty, she's had a lot of work, as a good spring gun should be, but I think it's going to be a very fun one, we'll put it that way. So thanks ever so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.